was your journey that led you to child life?
So let me think about this. This was a while ago. I was what I call one of the lucky people in that I found out about child life right as I was starting my bachelor's. And so this was a while ago. And I had originally really wanted to be a music therapist. The path that I thought I was going to take was working with children and families in some kind of medical setting, using expressive arts. And I had no idea what a child life specialist was. I'd never heard of it. And I was going to a state college, kind of just really psychology and liberal arts, and trying to like figure out what grad school I would go to for music therapy. And my stepdad had actually changed careers to become a nurse, and he was doing a rotation in pediatrics. And he called me up, I was away at college, and he's like, I think I found the job that you want, but you never knew of. And I'm like, oh, really? Tell me about it. He's just like, well, there's this woman, and she works on the floor here, and I don't really know what she does, but it seems like she has a pretty cool job. So let me see if I can get you in. And this was a while ago. This was like 20 years ago, before there was a lot of this, the kind of rules and regulations. And so literally he was just like, come join me. So I didn't have to go through any kind of like volunteer services or anything. I just showed up and I shadowed the child life specialist for a day during my winter break when I was a freshman in college. And she told me about the profession and what it was that she did and how she worked with the nurses and everything. And I was like, oh, wow, yeah, this is what I want to do. So I immediately figured out what school I wanted to go to, and I was on the East Coast, and so naturally for me, that fit was Wheelock. And so I applied to Wheelock, got accepted, and transferred my sophomore year. And at that time, they had a bachelor's in child life. And so I completed my bachelor's degree in child life from an institution that had a lot of the coursework and framework already set up. So I did field placements before an internship, and then I actually had 2 child life internships.
Where were your internships?
So the way that the program was developed when I was there, it's very different now, but how it was you did a traditional child life internship and then an alternative internship. So my traditional internship that was 480 hours was at Boston Children's Hospital. And then the alternative placement was, I was still really passionate about music and expressive arts. And so I did an internship with Music Together. And so I actually got to bring my child life skills to kind of like mommy and me music classes in the community. And that was really cool. That was a really great experience.
That sounds really cool. And that I think it's really cool that they wanted you to get both experiences, both alternative and traditional setting.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely, with the way that child life has grown and the future of it, I think it's imperative to be able to have that kind of scope and ability to understand how to transfer the skill sets. And that's really what I emphasize in my teaching now, is that transferable skill set.
Awesome. So are you a teacher now?
Yeah, so I am a graduate professor. I teach at Mills College in Oakland, California, but I actually just moved, and so I'm only teaching courses online at the moment. But for the last 3 years, I was teaching grad school at Mills.
Awesome. And that's in their grad school child life program?
Yeah, so it's in the Mills College, the School of Education, and it's a master's in early childhood education with an emphasis child life in hospitals.
Oh, okay. That's very cool. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you're doing in child life now?
Sure. So I'll tell you a little bit about my trajectory. Pretty much right after I got out of school, my bachelor's, I went right into being a child life specialist, working in intensive care units and hematology, oncology, and just a lot of really intense populations. And from that experience, I recognized that while my skill set was really strong, it was still very foundational, and I needed a lot more to be able to effectively work with trauma and grieving families. And so I actually went back to school and I got my master's degree in thanatology. And thanatology is the study of death and grief. And so my first master's was specific to working with end of life, bereavement, hospice, things of that nature. After about 5-7 years in the traditional child life scene, I transitioned to hospice care. And so I worked as a bereavement counselor with adults and kids. Transitioned to a pediatric hospice where I worked mostly with children, did a lot of palliative home-based care. Somewhere in there, I was a one-person program, developed some things. I've worked, I think, in just about every part of a hospital except the emergency department. That's the only place that I don't have a lot of experience with. And then once I started to do more pediatric hospice work, I was just really interested in the idea of legacy building and the implications of this practice. And so I stopped working and pursued my doctorate degree, and I obtained my PhD in psychology, emphasizing the work of legacy and child life practice, and just really digging deep into that. And that led me to teach. And so for the last few years, I've been mostly teaching, but I also have a private practice that I developed back in 2011. And so that practice has seen a lot of renditions. I did the traditional home-based care where I would go to patients' houses and work with them in their homes. And I have transitioned them more to working with students and with what I call early career child life specialists. So people with like less than 5 years experience, offering supervision and coaching to help them really establish their clinical skill set and strengthen and deepen it.
That is awesome. I guess I didn't even know that there were people out there that did that. So that's really cool to know, because I know as a student I could really benefit from something like that.
Yeah, it's there's not many of us out there offering this like remote supervision. I meet with my clients on Zoom, so from the comfort of your own home, wherever you are in the whole world. But yeah, I think, as I had mentioned before, it's so imperative that you get that foundational skill set, that you work in a hospital, that you have that traditional child life skill set. But to take it steps further, it's a transferable skill set. You know, the skills of child development, stress and coping, trauma-informed practices, coping, all of those things, those transfer to working with kids and families in just about any setting. And that's something that I've always been very passionate about. Even when I was in my bachelor's, I was always like, well, where else can child life work? It's great that we're in the hospitals and it's very important, and there's certainly a huge need for it, but there's also such a huge need in the wider community with so many populations. And I really feel like our skill set is not utilized as well as it could be.
Right. And I feel like I have some of those same ideas. I'm always, when I put this, or when I reached out to ACLP about looking for guest speakers, I specifically wanted quite a few people from alternative settings, because I know that it can be beneficial in other settings. I hadn't ever seen it in practice that way. So it was really awesome to hear back from so many people in the alternative setting. So thank you again for reaching out.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's really expanded, I would say, in the last 10 years, especially. When I first started working, I didn't know a single person in private practice. I don't even think it was on people's minds that was something you could do. And once I connected with a mentor who had a private practice, we just talked really about challenges. There are a lot of challenges, the benefits of it, and just the practical, tangible aspects that you just don't know. Nobody teaches you these things. You just have to fail and learn from your mistakes and then do it again. But I've really seen an increase, not just in private practice, But in all of these international programs that are opening, you have things like Child Life United that are doing the practicums all over the world. You have Morgan Livingstone, who's doing her work in Kenya and in Canada. You have people that are doing a lot of work with refugees and with immigrants. There's some child life specialist, I don't know her name, but she's working with Syrian refugees. She took like a year off of work and just raised all this money so that she could go work with Syrian refugees, the children, in a camp. And so there's just, it's limitless. I think that a part of some of the challenges that I see is, as much as students are really excited about the alternative, some of them want to kind of skip over the foundational, which I understand. I wanted to do that too. But it's so important to get that foundational, traditional skill set, and then actually work in the traditional field for a little bit so that you can understand what is this skill set, and then how can I transfer it to the population of my choice or the population that I want to work with. I think making that leap really quickly after graduating has been hard for a lot of people. And so that's where I really emphasize to just get experience, have mentors. Mentorship is so important.
Right.
And engage in what I teach about reflective practice. Really, really reflect and engage what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you're doing it, what motivates you to do it, what you're thinking, feeling, and expressing and experiencing when you're doing it. It's all important.
Do you have any other advice for students or tips for students entering the field?
Well, I know that the field is really different now. Like I definitely acknowledge that when I was doing internships, it was competitive, but it was nowhere near what it is now. Like students that are entering the field now and going through the whole practicum craziness and the internship craziness, you have to really learn a lot of preservation and a lot of persistence. I hear so many students be like, well, I've applied 3 times and I guess that's it. Like, I'm going to have to change careers. As much as there are different paths that you can take with being affiliated or not affiliated, I do strongly encourage people to be affiliated, be in a bachelor's program, be in a master's program that has a structure set up for you. I know that most places do not guarantee a placement, but if you have mentors and courses and people working with you to help you to look at your essays, to do mock interviews with you, chances are you're going to develop the skill set to get that placement. And so, really learning how to deal with adversity and how to deal with disappointment is something that you're going to have to learn how, throughout the process.